As a well-known Regina filmmaker, Layton Burton is used to telling stories. The short film he just posted to Facebook tells one that's extremely personal. It's the story of his dad, Jack, and a secret Jack carried.
My mom used to tell us they had separate beds because my father was a light sleeper, and she liked to sleep in the morning. So separate beds seemed like a good idea. It wasn't until my father's death that I first learned that he was a gay man. Even through the thick clouds of brain cancer, my father realized he could not and would not leave this earth without finally letting someone know who he really was.
Layton's short film is called Separate Beds, and Layton's in our Regina studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Sheila.
Tell me about your dad.
Wow. We don't have enough time. He was an amazing guy, trapped in a world that he couldn't change. And I think he could have been so much more if he could have affected change.
Yeah. Or even if he'd been alive today.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you just think about how his life might have been.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To be open with himself. And,
well, who was he to you growing up? I mean, what?
He was, this Father's Day, I realized that,
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. I'll get the Kleenex here.
It's actually, and I told myself I wouldn't do this too.
I know.
Because I've watched this 1,000 times. But
I know.
You know what?
I
think what I realized the most was that he was my hero.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why you posted it on Father's Day. And
I did.
And you're getting so much reaction from people. But it started as a class project.
It did. I'm in university. And my professor, Claire Carter, who teaches women and gender studies, I was taking that class with her. And I told her all about my dad. And she said, you've got to do something about this. You need to make a film about this. And so I thank Claire for that because she really did push the right buttons in me to make me go out and do that. And and it was cathartic almost because, there's a shot in the film where my two actors, Zachary Barker and Tina Flath Hansen, playing Jack and Lou, are dancing in a hotel room, and I shot that. Obviously I wasn't there, but I shot that thinking what it must have been like. And I was looking through the viewfinder of the camera as my cameraman was shooting, and I just started to cry, and I couldn't, and it was uncontrollable, and my key hair makeup artist came in and put her arm around me, and she said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Oh my God." I said, "I'm looking at my mom and dad." Yeah,
just bringing back what. So what were they to each other? Were they just close friends? What
well, you know what?
they?
Growing up as a kid, it just sort of you glance over your parents. They're just there. They provide you food and clothing. And take you to movies and. So I never really thought about it. I never thought of my dad as being heterosexual or gay. I never thought of my parents being conspiring in a good way to have the relationship they had. They were just mom and dad, and they were good people. I always had an affinity towards my father because he was an amateur photographer and gave me my first camera. So we spent a lot of time together, and. He never ever gave me the idea, even the thought that perhaps he wasn't who he was. Yeah. He was just Jack or Dad to me.
Until, as we heard in that little clip, on his deathbed.
Yes. Yeah.
What happened?
And well, he was in the last days of brain cancer. He had to use the washroom, and I was the only one I was visiting him at the hospital, and. So he didn't want to use, the diaper that he was in front of his son. So he asked if I could help him to the washroom. And I think in his head he thought, I'll just get to the washroom and go in and then come out again. But he was too weak, and so I carried him, and I helped him facilitate that. And as I was carrying him back, he said. He said no son should have to do that for their father. And I said, Dad, that's exactly what a son should do.
Yeah.
So,
and then
sorry, and to further that, once I put him back into bed, he pulled me close and he whispered, or in his raspy voice said, I am not what you think I am.
And did you know what he meant right away by that?
I didn't. I knew something was up. I knew he was trying to tell me something, but I just, how do you know? That just, you wouldn't think of something like that out of the blue. But he was so emphatic, and he was grabbing my hand. And it wasn't until my wife Sue and I went to clean out his effects, and he died the next day, by the way. He died the next day. So that we saw letters.
And you learn more about this life that he had.
Yeah.
Layton, it's so, we hear all the time about young people coming out and kids coming out to their parents.
Yeah.
And it just, for me, one of the most evocative things about this is you think about all the older people, grandparents, right? And parents who are maybe still living
and I'm sure they're
life
out there.
because,
Absolutely.
Yeah, because of the time in which they lived. And it's sad. I mean, I don't know. How do you reflect back on the fact that your dad had to keep this secret?
It's been, this summer will be 24 years since his death. And I remember when it first happened, and once I made that connection that, oh my gosh, my dad was gay. This whole time he was gay. He was a gay man. And the first thing that came to my head was, and what I beat myself up over for years was, how many times did I say the word fag or homo or something disparaging about a gender in front of him? And other people
that he associated with.
Oh,
right?
for sure. And I mean, I can't. So as a son, as a child, you beat yourself up over that a lot. But I eventually came to the realization that through my time with him, he made sure, and I remember him telling me this, that show me a man who makes nothing but excuses, and I'll show you a man who will never learn from his mistakes. So he always said it was okay to make mistakes as long as you own up to them and learn from them. And so that's what I said to myself. I made those mistakes, but I will not repeat them.
Thanks for telling us about him. And
sorry for the tears.
No, it's understandable. And with your permission, I've shared your video on my Facebook page, and a lot of people are commenting on it and saying what you said, that there are a lot of people still out there living that life.
I'm sure there are lots of Jack Burtons out there.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Layton.
Thank you, Sheila.
Layton Burton is a Regina filmmaker, and again, you can check that video out on my Facebook page. It's called Separate Beds.